Okay, great. I can see all the phones out already. I know this is a conversation that everyone's been looking forward to. It's great to actually just have Sabya on a stage and captive for a few minutes and see what he has to say on some of the happenings that we're seeing globally. So I'm going to dive right in because the one thing we've been talking about across some of our panels, of course, is Trump, trade, and the current geopolitical tension when it comes to commerce. Sabya, you have a store in New York. You must have an inside view on really how this is going to impact those that are conducting business back home.
So before I talk about America and Trump, in previous sessions I've already said that globally, craft should not be tariffed because craft is a soft power that creates diversity in the world, and it doesn't mean about craft in India, but craft anywhere in the world. Because if you make craft endangered, you kill a country's historical legacy, and then what are we leaving for the future children? Because it's not nice to live in a flat world. It's nice to live in a round world where there's diversity everywhere, so that there's reasons to travel, reasons to discover, reasons to experience authenticity. But having said that, let's talk about what's happening today. You see, we are getting into a protectionist environment where all countries are looking after themselves. So this is the real rise of non-inclusive nationalism. And when that happens, I think India is in a great position. I'll tell you the reason why. For the longest time, we haven't really played from our strength. There are many countries which can create a lot of products, but there are a lot of things that India can do that no country can do, because India's soft power is actually India's hard power. We've always thought of India's soft power as India's soft power. Craft, culture, music, celebration, architecture, food. But, when your soft power comes from your historical legacy, and India has such a strong legacy, if you start creating products with soft power, the price of product might go up and up and up, but it will become an irreplaceable product that the world cannot get anywhere else. And that monopoly that you create out of wisdom and heritage will always scale no matter what kind of tariffs go up. And we are in a good situation in America because of the fact that, we don't create products like Chanel and Hermes and Louis Vuitton because we create products that they cannot create because it's all made with Indian heritage. So unfortunately, the customer has to pay more, but the customer will pay because we have always made sure that Sabyasachi is an irreplaceable brand.
Amazing. I think that was really well said. I think that can have a round of applause for, yes. Thank you. You always talked about really building a larger message with your global growth and your global presence as well. Do you see that reawakening, that re-owning of Indian craft culture, especially among the global diaspora, the youth, when you're looking at globally, your clients as well at this point?
I've again said this before, and I'm going to say it again, because this is only true, that, I'm 51 years old, so I started in an analog world. Digital came to me much later. So I've seen the transition from the era of information, when the internet first came in, to the age of influence. Right now, we are in the age of intelligence, and the final frontier is going to be the age of wisdom. And it's already happening, because as the world gets more and more impaled by technology and AI, human beings are going to struggle to find humanity again, and this is going to give rise to wisdom and idealism. And I already see that happening in a lot of youth in the country. And for a younger population that is quite tired of what world they are inheriting, they are going to start forging better change. And I think that we are going to get into a place where people are going to become more and more heritage proud. I'll give you a simple example. I'm in the business of doing bridal wear. Children don't ask their parents anymore for advice. They ask their grandparents, because they will always say the grandparents know better because they came from a better world. So, there is a generation that plunders and there's a generation that restores. The younger generation of India is very India proud. They are very savvy. They wear their identity not from a colonial baggage, but from a point of identity which is very authentic. And I think that's going to be a great time for the country.
And you've always said that we're not a third world civilization, we're a third world country, we're a first world civilization. Yes. But what have been your learnings, Sabya, when it comes to carving out a global presence, creating that mind space in consumers' minds, all over the world? What have been your learnings in that journey that we can perhaps take from? Because today there's a lot of interest when it comes to the entrepreneurial ecosystem here in India, in going global, in carving out a niche in some of those markets. What would be your advice to some of them?
See, if you're creating something with somebody else's identity, you're creating a commodity. But if you're creating something with your own identity, it's a luxury. Why I say it's a luxury is because the most uncommon thing in people, which should have been very common, is self-confidence. So when you create something that comes from a position of confidence, then everybody wants to be a part of that ecosystem because what they buy is not a product they buy, is confidence. And I think, whenever I've gone outside India or whenever I've been inside India, what we have always given is the unshakable Indian confidence that comes from knowing your country, knowing who you are, and not being embarrassed by it. And I think that sort of confidence keeps rubbing off on people because, you see, the whole world is about people who subjugate and people who dominate. Once you stand up and say that, I'm not going to be subjugated because I know my sense of confidence, the negotiations change. And I think that's what we do. I've always told everybody in India that whenever you go outside in the outside world, always stand up for who you are and negotiate from a standpoint of confidence. People will give you what you want.
Okay. So on that thread, you had these, and you said earlier that you don't do designs like the usual luxury, high street brands. You had these patchwork jackets, I think, with crucifix designs that in your partnership with Neiman Marcus. How did that go down? Because that would have been really unusual. How did you get customers to adapt to it?
When I go out into the West, what I want to do is I want to give them their clothing but made with Indian handicraft or Indian craftsmanship. I don't want to be a cultural bully by telling them, this is my product and this is what you have to wear. That never works. Because what happens, at every level, it needs to be a collaboration, and it needs to be a collaboration of equal partnership. So I will say the silhouette is yours, but the craft is mine. So I think the biggest trick of going into unknown markets is to understand their culture and provide a solution that involves your culture. And when you create that cultural partnership, which is both equal, and where there is no dominance or subjugation, there's no appropriation, that is the best way forward.
And you've done a whole host of global partnerships. I've got a very long list here, but Neiman Marcus, Louis Vuitton, H&M, Bergdorf, the list goes on. What are you working on next? What can we look forward to?
Whenever I've done a global collaboration, it's always been about telling the India story. One of the most groundbreaking ones was H&M. And when they first came in, and I said, okay, fine, if you want a part of my market share of my country, then you better give me a part of your market share as well. So I said to them that this needs to be a global collaboration. We need to create things with an Indian identity, and we also need to make sure that a lot of the things are actually produced in India, not in other countries. They accepted every one of them. Then I said that, because it's H&M and Sabyasachi, we have to have one sari. That for them was a little dodgy because they'd never done a sari before. They said, we are a Western fashion brand. But I said, but your market is India, and we have to democratize the sari and give it a little bit of a fashion statement. And they agreed. I did the same thing with L'Oreal. I remember when I was doing the collaboration with L'Oreal, I said, you will have your Eiffel Tower, but we'll have Aishwarya Rai, not in a gown, but in a sari, because there needs to be an equal representation of both Paris and India. And I think whenever we've done collaborations, we have always done it from the point of view that we have to tell the India story. And these collaborations become ambassadors to geographies where people don't know much about the country or the craft. But having done my bit, I think the best collaboration that I want to do right now is with myself. I want to grow the business deeper and bigger in India, and I think we are in a better position to tell the India story ourselves and not through anybody else.
Okay. So, talking about democratization, congratulations on your partnership with Tata Click. You've also got Sabya products now that you can get for as much as 50,000. So is this something that you also want to go deeper into, making it more accessible, a new way of engaging with consumers?
I was born middle class. People might laugh at me, but that's the truth. When you're middle class, you're always middle class. It never changes, no matter how much changes happen with your money. So I really understand the importance of value. You know, in India, people only talk about price, they not talk about value. There's a different, price is a different thing, value is a different thing. Value is, when people talk about Sabyasachi jewelry, for instance, they'll say, oh, 1 crore ka jewelry hoga, 2 crore ka jewelry hoga, Deepika Padukone ne pehna hai, it's in Harrods, it's here, it's there. But you don't understand what we give for that price. I think for the first time, because we run national ads everywhere, including your paper, people sat with their calculators and they realized the price of Sabyasachi jewelry, because we have been an extremely value-conscious brand. One of the reasons why this is one of the largest brands in India is because people come back again and again, and if you don't have repeat customers, just because if it's a good product, it needs to be a valuable product. People need to see the intrinsic quality of the product, and if it works with the price point, people will come back again and again. Sabyasachi jewelry has great value. It probably has better value than most of the biggest jewelers in the country, and our quality is exemplary. It's a Birla company on a Tata platform, and I think we sold out about 75% of our inventory in the first 8 hours.
I think the site crashed, yeah.
And I think this is what you do. I think when people look at fashion designers, they think that, we don't create value. One of the biggest brands continue to be in business for the longest period of time is because what you do is that you actually create timeless value. People just don't know how to put it together.
So let's talk about the Sabya Bride, because that's your signature. And through the years, we've seen shifts in moods, trends. There was an experimental phase, there was a pretty phase. What are brides looking for today?
I think today all brides are looking for identity. I think there was a time when women had to get dressed a certain way because there was a stifling patriarchy in the country, and women didn't have rights of their own. A lot of girls got married off at ages where they did not have the right to proper education because they had to build homes. And a lot of big weddings were really about business partnerships, never about the bride and her identity. But today what is happening, the world has changed. The girls are getting married after they've established business, after they've traveled all over the world. And I think when you understand what your identity is before your marriage and when you're empowered, how you get dressed on the day of your wedding reflects that stronger identity. You're nobody else's bride but your own woman. And I think increasingly that choice is showing up in people, where people say, I don't have to wear a 20-kilo lehenga to get married. A simple printed organza saree is just fine because I don't want to waste that kind of money. Or somebody will say, no, I want to wear craft because I want to buy a piece that I can pass down to my children. The triggers are very different. The triggers are not about just looking like a decorative figure in your own wedding, but being an empowered person who creates the right social choices for herself. That's changed.
Okay. You're one of the few businessmen and fashion designers that has managed to actually cross the barrier between both, because very often after you see a conglomerate come in, there is fear or a natural sort of evolution into commoditization of the brand. You still manage to preserve the experiential part of the brand, the value, the essence. How do you, like you said earlier, put it all together?
It really is about having perspective, because building a luxury brand is like building a tree. So you build the foundation for years and years and years, and you wait for the tree to flower and fruit, and when the fruits happen, then you take the seeds and distribute it into other verticals. You cannot hurry up the process. All the biggest luxury brands in the world, which have got sustainable growth and which have lasted for over hundreds of years, have all been created with a single formula, that it's purpose over greed. When I started building Sabyasachi, and I remember I used to have a show called Band Baja Bride, and every girl who watched that show wanted to be a Sabya bride. And every time somebody met me at the airport or at a common area, they said, we would love our daughter to get married on your show. And then the big Bollywood weddings happened, and people said, oh, we love how you dressed up Deepika or Anushka or Priyanka. Today, the conversation has completely changed. They don't talk to me about product anymore. They only say, you make us so proud. And I wonder, it's such a small company. Why? It's probably because we've run the company with exacting integrity. I don't think Sabyasachi belongs to me. If you go into the Instagram, it used to have my face, it's been replaced by the tiger. I don't say I anymore. Whenever we make a mission statement about the brand, I say we, because there's a collective 2,000 odd people who are working tirelessly towards preserving the growth of the brand. And when I sold the company to Mr. Birla, I told him that, Mr. Birla, the brand does not belong to me. It does not belong to you. It belongs to India. We are just the gatekeepers, because what we are building through this is a corridor of hope, which will remain for the next generations to say, okay, we should be proud of our identity and our heritage. And this is the reason why I've always done what is right for the brand, not what is right for me.
Fantastic. You've clearly, are catering now to different segments of the market. But how deep do you feel is the Indian luxury market? Where it is now and where it could be, let's say, in the next 5 years?
India is probably one of the most intelligent markets in the world. You are not going to get seduced by an LV belt if the belt does not give you value and if it doesn't poke. I think we are very value-conscious customers. People always say that, they talk about India and they say, India is a country that produces cheap and they buy cheap. I say, hey, don't make that mistake. This country does not buy cheap. This country buys value. This country is not going to put their hard-earned money. This country has seen being ruled for centuries, much even before the British has come. Then the British came. Then the partition happened. And there were so many political turmoils and everything. And we have really, really worked very hard through all of them. It has not only hardened us, but it has also given us a sense of pragmatism. And that's a third world pragmatism, as we call it. And we are not going to squander that away for something that we don't believe in instinctively. And I think in India, if you create a luxury brand that focuses on the principles of value and not principles of price, you can go very deep. It's not going to be instantaneous, but this is also a country that unites and opens up to anything that it sees value in. So if you build it beautifully and if you build it in a very inclusive manner that every people in the country feels that they're a stakeholder in your company, it's going to become a very large company.
All right, that sounds promising and exciting. It's already a large company, so what's next? Which is the thread that you're most excited about right now?
When I turned 50, the fact that you're not immortal, it hits you, it gives you a reality check, and you realize that you have very little time in the world, and you need to speed up and do much more. I'm going to spend the next 15, 20 years doing mentorships so that, I didn't want to become like a Mr. Armani. He's still, God bless him, is still at 90, still helming the brand. I want to get a younger generation of people who will run the business. I've just recently appointed a wonderful CEO. We have a great design team. I think I will use the next 15 to 20 years in stewarding the company in such a way that the company can continue long after I've gone. And I will use the next 20 years to influence Indians to believe in themselves more. Thank you.
I just wanted to get a note on your foundation as well, because we talked about creating experiences, and his stores are, of course, signature icons everywhere. Can we also perhaps see something from you at V&A or Bhawtaji Lal, or are you looking to create something that perhaps maintains or preserves or tells a story of Indian heritage?
I think art is very important to me. A lot of art in the world today, unfortunately, has become commodified because it's become about label, which gallery is hosting you, who dresses up where, who networks better. And a lot of artists are struggling because they can't do all of that thing. My mother was a great artist. She had to let go because she could not speak English and she was raising her children. So she had to let go of her dreams of becoming an artist to becoming a housewife. And I've never forgotten that. It's made me feel very guilty. So we started the Sabyasachi Art Foundation. The idea of the foundation is to mentor artists who are going to become the next generation of artists. We already have one person called Atish Mukherjee, who has done a residency with me for 12 years. And we finally launched him. And I think some of the most important collectors in the country have already, he had a sold out exhibition. And I personally think he's going to become the next Sousa or the next Hussain of the country. So what I will do is I will use my platform because, I say this from Spider-Man, that when God when with great powers come great responsibility. I'm going to use the next 20 years of my life using the platform of Sabyasachi to spotlight on young talent that can grow up and become the next big stars of India without exploitation, so that they can find a future that will help them grow without fear.
Fantastic. I really wish we had more leaders like this, because someone who's made a mark for himself, for India, for his brand on the global stage, and everybody wants a piece of Sabya today. It continues to be a huge aspiration. I'm so glad that you're finding ways to pay it forward. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. Thank you.